All right, hopefully I can cut this part out, but if not, you're going to see my beautiful face sitting down. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to the Broadcast, episode 11. No, episode 12. We are on episode 12 already, and I am excited to put it out there. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple things that I experienced recently. We're going to be talking about drivers. That's going to be a hot topic. We're going to be discussing a little bit about family, birthdays, and then perhaps if we have time, we're going to touch on getting boxed into certain roles, positions, or places in life, right? So let's start this off with where I am. Why is the setting different, and why is the audio quality perhaps not as great as it could be? Well, that's a brilliant question, Nick. It's because I am down in Virginia Beach hanging out at my brother's house right now while he's at work making a video, because as I promised, you're going to get fresh new videos from me Monday through Friday. And you can check me out on YouTube or on all major podcast platforms. But I'm down here in Virginia Beach. Tomorrow's his birthday, so it's important for me to come down and celebrate with him. So I left at 5 in the morning, and it took way too long to get down here. There was way too many drivers on the road, and none of them really know how to drive. I think that's like a very conceited thing to say, because a lot of people always assume that they know how to drive the best. I mean, I think we're all guilty of it. And I'm not saying I'm the perfect driver, don't get me wrong. But basically, if you're in the left lane and you're going slow as hell, get out of the left lane. Just look, if you're a slow driver, I love you. If you're a fast driver, I love you. But if you're a slow driver, stay in the right lane, please. Just get out of the left lane. Like, everyone's got stuff to do. And we really don't have time to wait on you. It's very, very simple, and that's that. I mean, I find that people up north tend to drive faster than those in the south. And coming back to Virginia Beach, I remembered a little bit of that, and I got that because we're all like trying to hustle and get stuff done in these like big metropolitan areas. And so I think you develop this sense of urgency that you might not have in some more of the touristy or more rural areas, right? And so I'm like driving down, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm go. And I'm realizing I'm actually going over the speed limit, which I shouldn't do. And I don't recommend follow the speed limit. But I was, and I'm like tailgating this guy, and I'm like, please just get out of the way, you know? So I flashed my lights once because I didn't want to beep and be a rude person. And he stepped on the brakes a little bit. He got offended, and it kind of hit me. I'm like, probably in Virginia Beach, and some more of those southern areas, they probably don't get folks that are trying to rush as much as I was. And it's like, well, that's the lifestyle, you know, like you kind of take it nice and easy. Things move a little bit slower than they would other places. And it's like, wow, maybe he or she never experienced that urgency or that ability to move over. I don't know. Either way, I was like kind of done by the end of my drive. I was like, I'm just ready to go to sleep. I got up so early to drive, and I needed to kind of just get down here and get out of the car, if you will. If you guys have any bad drivers in your area, I'd love to hear some stories. And just so you guys are aware, Saturday I'm going to be doing my first discussion podcast or interview podcast with a buddy of mine who has his own company. And I've known for a while, so look out for that one. That's either going to go up Saturday or perhaps Monday of next week. I'm not sure yet. It just depends how I can splice it. I don't have my computer, and we'll be back to the regular content format by either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, but probably Tuesday. So let's just say Tuesday we'll be back to regular format. But until then, you'll have to deal with the sound quality and the settings. Maybe I'll do my next cast tomorrow in a really cool place in Virginia Beach and talk about that. But anyways, back to some of the main topics of why I came down and what we're actually going to get into today. So I think we said we were going to touch on family and potentially being boxed into who you are, right, from different people. So let's take the family piece and let's go into that a little bit further, right? And there's really two components to family that I think are important. I think birthdays are important. Again, it's my brother's birthday tomorrow, so if you get a chance, wish him a happy birthday. And I also think that it's important to spend time with your family, right? But let's go to birthdays first, right? Birthdays are this like day that everyone celebrates that is the day they're born. And a lot of people, including myself at least, I'm I'm not someone who likes to celebrate my birthday. I find it incredibly uncomfortable to receive gifts from anyone, but that's my own like psychological blocks of like receiving help from anyone that I'm trying to work getting over myself, and that's a whole nother story. Once you open that can, it's never going to close. But it's this day that I think you should feel important in, and I think it's a certain unearned importance, because it's like you didn't do anything, you were just born. It wasn't even your choice, but yet everyone looks at it as a celebration. And I think there's a great deal of value in that, because it's like, if you weren't here, then the world would be different. I'm a big believer in never, even if I had the opportunity to time travel, would ever do that, because I think that one small change, no matter how slight it could be, could potentially change the course of history if that was possible. But back to, birthdays. So that's why I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that having your birthday is important, because we're celebrating the day you're born, because you yourself are an important person. The world would be way different without you, and you would have not changed as much, and the world would have potentially a worse impact if you weren't here. And that's something that a lot of people, I think, forget, is to value themselves in that way, in a little bit. If you're going to be any day of the year kind of like a birthday monster or maybe a little selfish, perhaps your birthday is the only day it's acceptable to do that. At least that's the way I see it. Now, I don't condone being selfish, because I try as much as possible to give back to others, but and I'm sure as hell not perfect on that, so don't quote me on that. But, birthdays are important. For me, I love celebrating other people's birthdays. It's one of my most favorite things in the entire world. I always try, when I remember folks, to get things for them or to make things for them. I love cooking, so I love kind of making things for them. I used to be big into giving gifts, and over the course of years, I think that the way we value gifts in our society has shifted a lot, and I think that a lot of people are looking for that big, shiny new item, and I think that time is more valuable than money, even though a lot of people can argue that perhaps they're equivalent in a sense, because it takes time to make money and vice versa. But it doesn't take money to make time, but you get what I'm saying, right? So like 1 hour, of your day given to something equivalent, it equates to a certain amount of cash. And it's like a lot of people, they want that shiny item, that cash. And for me, I'm kind of like, I want to make something for someone, because that's the most valuable thing to me, right? And so I try my best to give people what skill I have that I'm pretty decent in, which is cooking, so I'll bake them some dessert or some dinner. I'll love to cook, and it's like that comes from my heart, and it comes from who I am, and I put a lot of effort and energy into it. And it's like that is a gift that I don't share with a lot of people, and I only get a chance to cook for some of my closest friends, but they are always happy to have me do it. And it's a very unique gift that is specifically unique to you. And everyone has skills like this, right? It's not just, it doesn't have to be cooking. Like if you're good at woodworking, if you're good at crafting or whatever, maybe you can sing really well. Sing someone a song. I guarantee they won't forget that. It sounds cheesy and it sounds stupid, but sing them a song, and they won't forget it. If you're a writer, write them a poem. I know that's even cheesier too, but like do it. I'll tell you what, if I received a poem on my birthday from a writer, I'd save that shit forever, because it would mean so much. It's like you put in your effort, your time, your energy, your mind to it, right? And you're celebrating that by saying, look, I'm taking hours out of my life, because everyone's life is finite, right? So, at least in this world, not counting spirituality, and that's a whole nother component to it, but you're basically taking hours from your life and saying, hey, I'm giving those to you in the form of what I'm best at and what skill I can do. And that to me is one of the best things you can give people. Everyone has unique talents. That's the beauty of being human. We're all different, and it's amazing. And all of us have our unique abilities, And that's what it is. Some of us are more talented than others in a lot of things. I can't paint for shit. I can't sing for shit. But there's a lot of people that are so talented in that area that it's like anything I would receive from someone who's naturally skilled in that way is just like, it's beautiful. It's like you are transferring a portion of who you are into the work you do and then giving that away. And that's lasting to me. And I think that it's something I at least personally like to give to others, and it's something it's hard to take back. Not that anyone would take it back, but you get my drift. And so that's kind of a little bit about gift giving and why birthdays I think are so important. You're a valuable person, and it's your day, and I think you should be celebrated. And if you're not celebrated, then I'm sorry. It's very unfortunate that a lot of people are too selfish and too conceited to realize that another human has been on this earth and they deserve as much love and respect and joy as the next one. And that to me is why birthdays are so important. And it's important for you to show up for your family too, which is the second piece to this family. I'm here for my brother. I love my brother, and it makes me happy to see him happy and to spend time with your family, even though you may not always get along with them, or perhaps you get into fights with them, especially with some of your extended family. Maybe you guys haven't talked in a while. I'm very guilty of that myself. I'm super guilty. Every family issue you have, I guarantee that I've made that mistake more than 100 times. So if you guys are listening and you're my family at all, I'm sorry, guys. But family's important. It's the role of family has changed, I think, over the years. When people were grouped closer together, they didn't have anything but their family. You look at how people evolved and how people evolved as communities, as individuals and communities over time, and you find that folks never really left the town they were in the further you go back. And the more current you get, you start to see people migrate at a higher percentage in dispersion than they had in the past. And this is something I think you're always going to see. Like, we have a very diverse and widespread planet, more so now than we ever have, right? And it's because you have people that just go to different countries, they go to different states, different cities, and that's something that you didn't see as much in the past. And because of that, the role of family was so important. It was like every time you needed help, every time you needed to rely on someone, your friends, your tribe, if you will, was your family. That's who you turned to. That's why it was so important, and that's why it's important to still kind of remember that. Not in the sense that things were better or worse back then, but in a sense that they're still your tribe, they're still your family, and it's something that should be cherished. There's something to be said for blood relations, and it's really hard to put your finger on. It's really hard to drill down into and say, why is that so important? Perhaps it's because both you are related and both you were born close enough without choice that it's almost like you might share some of that history. And I think that's really what it is, because blood relations are so important, because you guys share history together. And that's something that is very hard to find. That's what makes some of the closest relationships with people that are not blood related is history. What did you guys share together in the past? What did you guys do? And for those of you that don't have family, and I'm very, very sorry if that's the case, that I can't imagine how difficult that might be and how that might feel. But if you don't have family, you tend to see a lot of folks rely heavily on their friends, and their friends become their family. And it's kind of a neat thing to see, sad thing, but a neat thing to see. And, I've been in that role before by some of my buddies that don't have many family or friends, and I've kind of taken on the role of family to a certain degree for some of them. And, it's unfortunate, but it's still, in a similar sense, something you should protect and cherish. The whole point of family, and friends close enough to be called family, is that if you distill it down far enough, if you piss them off, they shouldn't leave your life, right? A lot of people say, you know what, I cut my family out, this, that, or the other. And I think there's reasons why people do that. I'm not a big proponent of that. I think that's not always a positive thing to do unless they're negatively impacting you to a very great degree. And I know that happens to a lot of folks out there, and they've suffered a lot from their own families. But it's still something you almost can't cut away, because it goes back to that blood tie, that blood relation again. And it's something I find quite interesting. Ask what an anthropologist's opinion is on family and how the family structure and family unit changed over time. You'll get a very more in-depth answer than I can provide. And hopefully we can, maybe chat with some folks that know a little bit more about family than I do in the future, but it's important. That's really what it comes down to, is family's important because they should have your back. A healthy, successful, not inherently successful in terms of career or personal gain, but successful in a sense that they stick together to a certain degree. Family should stick together and they should have your back. And you're going to fight with them sometimes, and you're going to get pissed off, and you're going to say some things you don't want to say. And that happens everywhere. That's not unique to you or your family. But the whole point is you can't, and you shouldn't probably leave them high and dry. You should probably kind of make up and get over it, and then, go on with your life. And it was so important to do that in the past when, again, the family unit was much closer and most people's friends were related to their family in some degree, that, we're losing that as a community a little bit, that structure of having people close to you that you can rely on, that can help you get ahead and help you grow, because their name depends on it. And more than a name, but their history should be remembered. There's a lot to think about family. It's a very deep and vast topic that I think should definitely be explored more. And I definitely would like to chat more about this another time, and maybe get some more information on it. Maybe chat with a few people that know more about it, maybe some people who are big into history. That'd be kind of cool. Maybe talk about how I believe Mesopotamia was one of the areas of the world where people started migrating from first. Maybe an expert in that area would be cool as well. It's always an interesting subject. But with my limited knowledge of how all that stuff works, I'm going to table that subject for now. And then let's move right into our final topic for today, which is going to be on getting boxed into things, okay? Now, this topic probably won't be too long because I think I've touched on it just barely on a few other of my podcasts, but what I see very frequently is people getting boxed into a certain role in life, a certain career field sometimes, a certain way of handling themselves, or a certain way of viewing the world. And what I mean by that essentially is you have people that either box themselves in by their own mental structure because it's so rigid, or you have others that want to see people in a certain light and try to box them into certain dimensions to keep them from becoming who they should be or who they would tend to grow towards naturally, right? So let's take a look at each of those. So for the first one, and I think this is probably the hardest one to break, is we all have our own mental barriers and structures that we put in place that define us who we are. And that's the key point. We define ourselves, and by that definition that we give ourselves, we put up walls in certain areas so that we generally stay within those confines of who we are. And it is very hard to overcome your own mental barriers, And so with that being said, we should probably define ourselves less, right? Instead of saying, I'm Nick, the strategist who loves Star Wars and scotch and working out, perhaps I'm just Nick and I'm doing what makes me happy. Now, those are two very different things, right? You have a person that we've now described on one side that has very specific habits and interests, and we have another person that's almost amorphous and could be or do anything, right? And you could see yourself in either way, in either light. And I don't know that one is better than the other. I believe the anamorphous idea of yourself is better because it allows you to grow in certain ways that you may not be comfortable with. You know, a lot of people find it really tough to grow out of their own box that they put themselves in, and this is why I think it's the toughest thing. Because once you put that box down, breaking down those walls is so much more difficult than it is putting them up. You know, if you went through a bad experience in life, you might say, well, I'm never doing that again. Like, I don't like cheesecake. That's a great example for me. When I was younger, I got really sick from eating a cheesecake once, and I was like, I'm never eating a cheesecake again. So it took me a really long time to kind of work my way into that. And now I love making cheesecakes. I think they're okay, but you know, the point is, I confined myself into being the guy who doesn't like cheesecake, and therefore I didn't spend any of my time investing, learning more about cheesecake, eating it, trying it, all this other stuff. And I could have done that, you know. Conversely, you know, there's times in my career where I never saw myself as someone who did, you know, very specific things that I am now, you know, flourishing in and enjoying. You know, I made a complete career shift for myself from business straight into technology at a point in my career, and it was large enough to where I was able to redefine myself as a person. And that's when I took on this idea that perhaps being more amorphous is a better way of looking at yourself, right? And again, this can be taken on to mean your personal life, your work career, or many more things. You know, if you have your personal life as well, if you're a runner, right, as an example. I'm not. I run sometimes. I'm not a runner, I suppose. But if you're a runner, you say, you know, I'm Joe Schmo the runner. And it's like, okay, well, if that's how you've defined yourself, then maybe you're not going to do other exercises because you're defining yourself as a runner. So that's why it's bad. Boxing yourself in allows you to be less creative. It allows you to grow into areas you could naturally grow to, that you might naturally be driven towards if you wouldn't have put up those walls to begin with. So that's the first piece. When it comes to getting boxed into certain areas, don't be the person that boxes yourself in. Then it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot, you know, and that's not good. It's not good to shoot yourself in the foot, and it probably hurts. I know it hurts because, again, like I said, breaking down those walls, as I've had to do many times in my own life, is much more difficult than it would be to essentially go in and kind of see yourself as just a person who's interested in things in general, or certain areas maybe, but not. Try to do less of the specifics. Like, the less specific you can be, probably the better off and more comfortable you'll feel, to a certain degree. Now, the other side to that is when people try to box you in, and I'm going to use a brilliant suggestion or example from a career perspective, right? So in one of the companies I was working in, one of these big consulting firms, they try to push you into specializing, right? Because it makes sense for them. They can classify you as a certain way. They can then sell you out and build those hours and kind of figure out what the company needs to grow, right? But for me as a person, I never saw myself as a specialist. I can do some things in areas that I specialize in, that I could theoretically specialize in, but I don't want to do that because for me, I enjoy doing more greater strategy than that. Like, I like taking a look at companies from a top down, working with the executives, helping them formulate their strategy into something stronger, or creating a strategy from scratch if there wasn't one that existed. And to do that, you need a much more broader view of everything. And specializing is kind of like putting blinders on yourself, except in one specific area, right? And so this company I was working for, basically it was like you got to force yourself to specialize. And it was like, I remember having my coach, we had career coaches at this company. Every time we sat down was like, Nick, what are you going to specialize in? What are you going to specialize in? And I'm like, damn it, I don't want to specialize in anything. And he's like, well, you're not going to get promoted. And I'm like, yeah, so be it. You know, at the end of the day, it's what, a title? you're either going to pay me more money or I'm going to leave, so in any event, I elected to not specialize. Now, that might have hurt my career in that specific firm a little bit, but I think it helped me overall by keeping my mind open and pushing back on those that kind of forced me to say, hey, I know you like everything and that like everything excites you, but we want you to just focus in one area. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to focus in a broad area. And that's something that I found was one of the most helpful things in my life, is by saying, at least to get me to where I am now, where I basically just do executive strategy 24/7. It's the most fun thing. A lot of people find it boring, but for me, it's like there's nothing more exciting than figuring out how you're going to solve big problems and how to drive towards them, right? But I digress. The point is, if I would have let myself get boxed in by someone else, then I don't know if I'd be in the same place today that I am now. And that can also work in your personal life as well. If you let people see you as something you may not be, then that can definitely hurt you. A lot of times, if you're always seen as, let's say someone says you're the nice, wholesome person, and maybe you're not so wholesome on the inside, then it's like, well, you're letting people basically dictate who you are. And you're kind of living a lie in a sense that you're letting society see you a certain way. Now, before I go any further, it doesn't inherently matter how society sees you, right? The issue is not about society seeing you a certain way. The issue is about letting society dictate who you are. Okay, that's the key point. That's the crux of the argument. Okay, you should not let society dictate who you are, and you should not let your rational brain dictate who you are as well, right? That comes natural. You grow into your position, and it doesn't happen overnight. For some people it does, right? And those people are very lucky, very blessed. But for most people, it takes years and years and years to grow into who they are, and that's just life. Okay, so don't let society push you in that direction if it's something you're uncomfortable with. And I would recommend allowing yourself freedom and space to flex and move and grow, and that it just makes you more in touch with yourself in the end. And that should be a goal, I think, for a lot of people. If you're not in touch with yourself, then you're going to regret, you're going to have needs that were perhaps not met, that you wanted to go back to and explore more. And if you don't have that, then what are you going to do? So it's interesting. I think it comes from a place a lot of times when society tries to box you into a certain thing. And again, I'm not inherently just meaning careers. I mean, it could be anything. Like if someone gives you a title as like, I used an example earlier, Joe Schmo the runner. Perhaps you yourself didn't see yourself like that, but perhaps all your friends see you as Joe Schmo the runner. Well, then you're going to get asked for running advice all the time, or, perhaps what's the best running trails or whatever it is. And it's like, well, maybe you don't give a shit about running. Maybe you just do it leisurely. And it's like, I don't want to take all these questions. Well, it's because you let them box you in, but it's hard to break out of that. But to do that, sometimes you just have to confront the folks that see you in that way and say, hey, it's not really that important to me. And I think that's a kind of the golden word there. It's not that important to me, because then you kind of allow yourself to reset. But again, it's not about that. It's about if they, said, hey, you're the runner, well, then you shouldn't see yourself as a runner unless you want to see yourself as a runner, as an example, but I think these people, they don't do it maliciously inherently. I think it's because the way our brain works is we are able to categorize things much faster than any other organism on the planet. Our brain does that inherently, and it does it really well. There's a lot of information that we're taking in from all of our senses 24/7. And the way your brain kind of makes it work is to basically look at something, assign a label to it, and move to the next thing, right? Your brain is this like network of connections, okay? And it's not linear. It's not as easily described as it would be to write down what an object is. So essentially, if you were, talking about like this cup here in my hands, right? Your brain, this is a cup, but your brain may store it as cylinder that holds water, Well, what the hell does that mean? Well, I don't know. But when you grab a cylinder that holds water, your brain says, oh, I remember, that's a cup, as an example, But your brain, it's easier to assign that label to it, to group like things similarly. And it's, to my understanding, impossible to break that because it's just a genetic thing that we do as humans, Otherwise, I think we'd just have too much stuff to remember. But again, what we can do is we can teach our brain how to ungroup those things. And again, that's another discussion for another day. But, going back to what I was saying, don't allow yourself to get boxed in. Don't allow you to box yourself in. Don't allow others to box you in either. And if you can do that, you'll be more in touch with who you are, and you'll be able to grow into the person that you were meant to be a lot easier than if you have to force your way. So that's my cast today, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. Again, if you wanted to, subscribe. That definitely helps me out, and I would appreciate it greatly. This is the Broadcast, episode 12, and I'll catch you guys later.